Hey guys, it is Razor Falcon here, and what we're seeing real fast is me downloading the Teeny Shell Challenge that LilSimsie created. I love her videos, and I love the idea of this challenge, and I was like, you know what I want to do? I want to record this challenge, because it seems like a whole lot of fun to do. Um, I'm also really bad at building my own shells for my own houses, or I like to think I am. And I just really felt like, you know what, it'd be kind of fun to take that pressure off and just kind of work with whatever shell I'm given. Um, Also, this just looked like a lot of fun. And if you see me adding and deleting things like that door there, I was trying to keep this as base game and teeny living as possible. After a minute, I just, like a hot minute, not like early on, I kind of gave up on doing that just because it became so hard to keep my theme and do it. But I tried to keep anything that wasn't part of Teeny Living or the base game fairly small and not like a huge part of it. So if you did want to replace something, you could. Um, it was just something I preferred for my own world. But for the most part, like the basic shapes of the house, the furniture, that's all base game or teeny living. I felt pretty confident in keeping it both of those just because obviously with the shell challenge it would probably work more in your favor if you do have teeny living, but I get the feeling if you don't have it then you'll just have a few more things to replace, but overall the entire shell and the general vibe of the house should be the same. um, So I was trying to see if I could do something different than I saw in Vixella's video, see if I kind of wanted to create my own bookshelf area, but I started going at it and I'm like, I just wasn't quite happy with that. Um, so I feel like I did a lot of the stuff that she did, especially in the end, since this first part I was kind of doing the challenge wrong by adding these little features out here that I absolutely adore. Um, but because the shell challenges, I can't add any walls outside it that are touching the house either. Um, that had to go towards the end. So I actually have both the completed version of this and of this wrong version, and the corrected challenge was basically done right. There was a couple of fence things I'm like, I don't want to count um, as like an edit to uh, sorry, her shell. I don't want to count it as not being correct, even though technically it isn't because it did add tiles. I just felt like they looked so cool that I had to keep them, especially considering that first fence that I end up doing on the top, you'll see it towards the end, didn't count as tiles, but the rest did. So I kept those in there even though they're not exactly within the rules of the challenge. Um, but if you take stuff like that off, it'll definitely meet the challenge. I just really liked how they looked and I couldn't part with them. um, so we go back and forth with the kitchen here. I wasn't really happy with it for the most part, especially at this point. Um, but I found out that the problem with it was I felt like there needed to be more light on the other side of the house. So by adding those windows, it just started coming together a lot more. And then I really wanted this to be like a more modern, kind of what you would see when people start building like their mansion baron mansions, with that very, especially in the get to work pack, so that more modern type of feel. Um, I thought it'd be kind of fun if you had like a mansion baron sim in this house, just kind of working towards getting to that life aspiration by starting off with this tiny, tiny house that looks uh, very modern. And in any places I kind of stopped like I did just a second ago, is because I was texting a friend of mine. Haven't seen him in person in a minute, so just kind of going back and forth with that before both of us go to bed. And of course, I was recording this, so I wasn't going to be sleeping until this happened. I was very dedicated to this. And I was doing my best not, like I said, I was doing my best not to copy Vixilla, but it just got to the end here and I was like, it's a really good layout for this house. It was really kind of what I was looking for with it, especially for a two-sim house built in a double bed. I'm not sure if you can really see it in this build, but I do have a couple of mods like bunk beds that would have probably made this build a little easier. But I was trying to keep the whole no mod thing for um, like Simsie and I'm sure many other builders do to make this more user friendly and download friendly for you guys. So if I wanted to in my own personal game, I could go back and do that. Otherwise, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out with um, Sims 4 stuff. So, as beautiful as this bathroom eventually turns out, it does eventually have to get moved into a more awkward layout in a different part of the house because this entire room can't exist with the challenge rules. I've also been really into adding these little partial walls with no doors. I just think that they would work really nice as far as spacing goes. And I also just love adding little built-in closets or little cubbies for things to go in, like with the fridge downstairs. It kind of has its own little wall to set up against, so it doesn't seem super weird. And this house is definitely not a starter home, but if you did want to use it as one, all you would really have to do is, well, all I think you would really have to do is replace some of the um, more expensive items like the fridge and the sink and the oven with cheaper items, and then it would probably get down that 10,000 it needs to be cheaper. And I was kind of playing with this whole checkered floor idea. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. So that's where we are right now. I went back when I was re-editing the house and tried it again just to see how I felt. I didn't end up going with it, which is why you don't see it when I quickly redid it, because I fixed the house off camera and I was like, nah, I gotta record at least what I did to do that. So we went back and did that by downloading the old house and fixing it again. Um, and since it is a tiny house, I felt like making it look a lot more dimensional would probably be for the best, so that's what I went ahead and tried to do. It's always really weird too, trying to do roofs on these things. Sorry. Um, just because we don't really have a good flat roof or a way to hide that little edge. I did eventually find something I'm happy with. That also questionably meets the challenge rules, but it doesn't seem like it affected the tile count. So I think that part is actually fine. And then finding base game or teeny living windows was kind of fun. Um, just because we've got a lot of nice windows and packs outside of those two that I was kind of wanting to use. Um, and of course, with the bed where it is, this entire little hangout section was kind of blocked off in this version. So I just decided to add some sort of greenery there, and we'll eventually get to something that looks really nice. Yeah, and I kept opening up other tabs in this game since I use a mouse pad. I'm not the most accurate with my um, with my clicks. So that was definitely a huge part in it. Um, and then I was trying to find something really nice for this area that wasn't part of a different pack. Uh, like the one that I really like, which I do end up going with as part of the Get to Work pack. Uh, so if you do download this house, you are going to be missing those plants there. But you might be able to find something else that you really like to put there. Like maybe after I change it, you decide to put more of those like graded looking overhangs on it, because those could also look really cool with the update. I don't think with this exact version they looked the nicest. Maybe after I put the half walls up there, they were fine, but I don't know. I just liked these better, and I felt like they worked more. I'm so glad we're able to slide up those poles. Is that what it is? Yeah, I think this is the part where I realized that those beams were also not part of the base game, but we really don't have a lot of like solid base game pillars, or like square base game pillars. So that was definitely another challenge to this. I did end up going with those anyway, but you might just have to replace them if you really like them with something else if you don't have the Get to Work expansion. And then at some point, this house kind of turned from being very modern to being very modern and greenery. I think that was also just the thing with it being a tiny house, that the greenery just felt like a very essential part to this. Um, I was very much, I was definitely playing around with adding color to the walls. I kept going back and forth with that, but in the end, I was like, I really like this whole light gray, dark gray thing. And while I'm okay with adding splashes of color other places, I didn't really feel that having something other than gray was adding much to it. Okay. So I'm trying to think of what's coming next because I did this last night, so I've slept since then. Um, see, this is another part. So I accidentally opened something that messed up a lot, so I had to. So that happened a couple of times where those messages popped up, and I'm like, please stop. Um, so if with the colors that I'm doing, obviously the green and blue are kind of coming through there, which I'm not mad at. I actually like that, and I keep going with a little bit of that. So the colors come in like the furniture and the little clutter or plants that I put around the house. Lighting was a challenge, for sure, because I was trying to find lighting that worked really well with this while not being super off. But of course, that's always the challenge in The Sims. Finding lighting that just really complements the room. And I felt like something needed to go in this area because it was just so empty. I think usually you would put like a mirror in there, but we didn't need another mirror. And while the plant picture wasn't my favorite thing to put in there, I think it worked better than anything else, any other paintings at least that I had. Because I realize here that we have more than just paintings, which you'll see in a minute. Because I try and find like 3 paintings that work really well there. And then I try and find like a mirror. Uh, which I almost find something I'm happy with. And that painting just felt a little dark. So I kept going back and forth with this, trying to find something, and I almost kept that. But I just felt like that upstairs area was looking a little full. And I like that they added the pride flag. I actually forgot that they had added this, even if they don't have mine. But I just didn't feel like it worked as well with this house. But I definitely think I might be using it in some other build. Maybe we have a Pride Month build that we get going on, and that ends up being a thing. Um, but just not for this one. There's a lot of furniture choices that I went through that I felt almost worked for this house, but didn't quite make the cut, so they eventually go away. Like, I kind of like those plants on the wall, but they're going to be moved in a minute just because they don't quite fit what I was going with here. I was having trouble making this table look how I wanted it to. Maybe I could have dropped the TV down and it wouldn't have been a problem, and then I put like a painting on the wall. But I do end up going with something on this table. Obviously, the TV is a little off center. I'm sorry if that bothers any of you. Um, it doesn't bother me as much as it probably would in other circumstances, but it's still definitely not in the center of that wall. It was kind of a worthwhile sacrifice, though, considering everything. Alright, so we're kind of getting to like the jumping down here in my bar. And then this, I believe, is getting towards the end of the original house. We start putting finishing touches everywhere and double check that everything looks how we want it to. I might delete that double check so that, although for this one maybe I shouldn't, so that you can see what it all looks like. But you can also go in the gallery and get a basic idea. I don't know, that almost seems cruel not to give you a little bit of a run through of it, even if, since it's not going to be in the screenshots. I was getting the same feeling with the desk as I was getting with the with the table, well, the TV stand under the TV, where it just felt less like tactful clutter and more like clutter. Um, so I definitely went back and forth with all of that. Sorry, I'm still very tired. Okay. And then we're getting into the landscaping aspect of it. I didn't feel like this house needed too much in the landscaping department. But I did put some there. Like around the house. And then we kind of just go around here. And this kind of mirrors what we're going to have edited in the next part of the video when we go through and fix everything that I did wrong with the challenge. I feel like I want to start rambling on something else, but there's like not enough time left in this video for me to think of a topic to ramble on before we start going through there. But I definitely wanted any landscaping that I did to be very structured. I was thinking of putting something in the front. It didn't quite look how I was wanting it to, so you'll see here in a minute that this just goes away and I spent all this time on absolutely nothing. Okay. So then we go here and we start deleting things, moving things around. Obviously, well, I don't know if it's obvious, but as I said before, I went through and I had done this already. So this morning I just really quickly went through and recorded me fixing all of that because I felt like you deserved at least that much. I don't think the Sims that are down there are the ones that are going to stay in this house. I think they're definitely going in a tiny house, but not this one. Um, So, sorry, I'm thinking. So we go through and start messing with the roof a little bit, getting that to look really nice, and we start making this little fence cage area. That's the part that's really questionable for if it actually meets the challenge, but I really just felt like it needed to exist. It just adds something that I really liked and I really felt made the house come together. Um, so as we start going through here, we do have to edit quite a bit on the outside because, of course, that's where my mistake was. And there's a little bit of awning, that's what it's called. There's a bit of glitching on that awning over there that became the new roof because they're overlapping in order to make it look nicer. Um, but I don't think it's too distracting. If you do, just bb.move objects on, and you can move them however you please. Um, oh, that's where the keys went. I knew I put the keys somewhere, because I ended up moving those down there, and I also ended up changing the cabinets to a more brownish gray, a warm gray, rather than the cool gray.